Good morning, and welcome to our third installment of Morning Coffee with Brigid. Welcome if you're coming for the first time. And again, this is brand new, so I appreciate anybody who actually gets up and does these with me. It's quite early to be doing it, and I expect a lot of people who are going to watch it are probably going to watch it on a replay. But for some people, and it's a Saturday too, so there's a lot of people who are not working today. I really lose track of what day of the week it is when I'm at home, working from home. Because it'll be, I have clients, I may have appointments, I may have different things on different days. Yesterday I actually went out with a friend who I used to work with. She had texted me around my birthday and said, hey, let's get together. So we went out last night, and we arrived fairly early on a Friday because things get very crowded at this one place that we go. And by the time we realized it, we had been there for almost 3 hours. And I was like, okay, usually 2 hours is about the limit that a restaurant wants to. And finally, the place was really filling up. So I was like, yeah, we better get on. And I usually have an hour drive home after that. So, but because we used to work together, I'd stopped in at my old workplace, which I still, because I still have an employee sticker on my car, everybody just kind of waves me through. I'm like, okay. I'm like, should probably make me take that off before I leave. But I mean, it's not that there's any danger there. But I mean, if you had gotten rid of a former employee, there have been occasions in the past where people have left under not so good circumstances, and it's like, yeah, you might not want them to. You might want to check the license and everything, but they don't really have the time or the staff to do that. But not that it was an issue. But so I went and visited my old workplace, and it was, and I keep forgetting it was Friday because I'm thinking there's a lot of people who aren't around today, and I thought, but then it was I realized, yeah, that's because they're people who might work the night shift or different things, and they would usually be coming in right around that particular hour. And when I got there, it was just about an hour before everybody was getting ready to go home for the day because a lot of people were on the hours that I was on, which was 7 to 3. So, I mean, it was fine. I got to chat with a few people who I knew and who I hadn't seen the last time I had been in, which is, I don't go in very often. I don't, everybody was nice. I have no bad relationship with anybody who's there, obviously. And it's nice to visit once in a while, but even just the energy of it, I'm like, it just reminds me why I'm so glad that I don't go to work anymore at that place. I'm just very glad that I don't. There's a lot of changes that are being made or that they're trying to make, and a lot of academic libraries, because not even just the one that I visited, but even other ones that I'm connected with now in teaching and other stuff. I'm hearing about projects where they have new, and again, I'm not referring to this particular place, but where the university librarian will come in and be like, okay, we're going to gut the whole library now. We don't, universities don't really need a library. We're going to turn it into the fun phrase they have is information commons or something like that. And it's something they're going to come to regret in the future because I think that's, I studiously fought against that concept pretty much everywhere that I worked. Because an information commons is not, it's, I don't know. I just feel like librarianship as a general profession is falling a lot on its face right now. It is a profession that I feel is probably one of the most important right now, especially in a world where there's fake information everywhere, where there's spam bots and AI throwing out fake information everywhere, where people are not really able as much to be able to distinguish fact from fiction, and the lines between those become frequently and sometimes rather disturbingly blurred in the public discourse, and also just and of course that even if you say, oh, but those people just believe fake things, it's like, yeah, but that has a real world impact. It's like a psychosomatic illness. It has a real world impact. There may be no actual cause. Like, your stomach may not be hurting because there's something wrong with your stomach, but nonetheless, the pain there is real. I mean, the effect of it is real. Okay, so I feel like librarianship is a hugely important profession. And I know people are trying to get away from the, little old lady with the bun in her hair and the glasses with 8 million cats. Well, I think a lot of librarians still have 8 million cats, which I don't see as a detriment. But I think in the effort to try to make over the image, they're not, it's still a profession in a lot of ways, or it's trying to make itself the same as computer science or computer programming in a lot of ways. And that sort of human element of that has to do with reference, which used to be quite central to it. I mean, I never worked in that. I always worked in the back office dealing with data, but it was that's sort of a critical human component of it. And I just feel like there's a lot that's just being kind of thrown aside, and the idea that books are no longer useful. I mean, reading things from books, there's actually a lot of useful information that's still in books, and people do not know how to properly use books. I just finished grading final essays and papers, and some people do legitimately know how to use that material, but there's a lot of people who just don't. If I said, like, I had a lot of students who were doing papers. I mean, this is a mythology class, so they're doing papers on, like, Medusa or papers on Aphrodite. And I was like, right, look, the library actually has in print in its collection, and these are students who are on campus. I said, go there, there's a book, like there's the Medusa Reader. There's a collection of essays that are going to address specific topics that are specific to what your paper is talking about. And I think maybe one of them bothered to go look at the book. They don't, because now they feel that, oh, well, I don't have time to read a whole book, because they don't understand how essay collections and things work. It's like, no, you go in and you just find the one essay that you want, and that's where you can get bibliography information. That's where you go and you use the index. If you do PhD work, I mean, you need to be able to find that trail. You see an article that is on your topic that interests you. You want to follow up on all the sources that the person who wrote that article had. You want to go back and look at those, because you want to look at their evidence, and you want to decide that may be more evidence for what you're doing, or it may, you may agree or disagree with it based on the evidence they're using. So it's a very, very important thing, and I just feel like, I don't know, I do feel like it's a profession that's falling flat, because everybody in this day and age seems to think that libraries aren't relevant. But anyway, that's just a little side note about yesterday. If you're just joining me, welcome, hello. But just basically just talking about how yesterday I was out at my old job, and I was a librarian professional librarian for 27 years. I did work in libraries from 1988 to 2021. I mean, that was, and that's including me as a kid in high school, getting my first job working in a library, because my whole life has just kind of been around them, and I only got out of that business 3 years ago. So I have, but what I did want to discuss this morning, because I got in, and sometimes when I go out and it's not like we were out terribly late, but this morning I woke up, I was like, oh, it's 5:45, and I go live at 6:30. So I was really just kind of rushing around trying to get myself together. But normally one of the first things I do when I get up is, if I have dreams, I write them down. And when I do coaching with people, one of the things that what I always encourage people to do, even people who are not coaching with me, just even people who just come in, who maybe just come for a reading or just come for different things, I say, write your dreams down. It's really important that you do that. And I have my own little dream journal here, which was a gift from a friend. And I thought that, last night I did have an odd dream. It wasn't, sometimes I will have really, really long dreams, and other times I will just have snippets, or I'll just remember snippets. The dreams probably are longer, but I may only remember bits and pieces. And last night I had a dream about, I feel like I was in charge of some kind of a project, and it was a project that had many facets to it. And I was walking around with somebody. It was I was the team leader of this project. And given the building, I feel like this was the reason I brought up the fact that I went back to my old workplace, is that I feel like I was in my old workplace. So it was almost like I had my old job, where I was a department head, project manager, things like that. And it was, very technical and all that kind of stuff. And so I had been doing some kind of a project there, and I was walking around with people, and it was like people were saying, oh, okay, well, this needs to be done over here, and we have this deadline for this, and this task has to be done. And I was just kind of taking it all in, and I was kind of also giving direction about things, because people were saying, oh, we want to do this, and I'm like, well, no, you can't do this because of, whatever. So anyway, it was that kind of a thing. And then I had gone, and I was looking at myself in a mirror, and my right eye, this one, right on the inside here, I noticed there was a dark red spot. and I was looking at it. I'm like, that looks like blood. And then it kind of just suddenly filled my entire eye. Like I just had, it was like, yeah, I mean, not to be graphic, but it was like blood just coming right out of my right eye in this dream. It was, thank God, not real life. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to emergency, and heck with all this. Okay? All this project planning is going to be for naught because, or it's going to have to be delayed because I need to, somebody needs to take me to hospital with this, right? So that was most of the dream. Now, what I decided, because normally the first thing I do when I get up after I have a dream and after I've written it down, which I've already done, I use the dream cards. And I thought, you know what, I'm doing a live and I talk about the dream cards all the time. Why don't I just show how I use them? So these are big cards, okay? And this is a deck. Unfortunately, I always hate promoting resources on here that are no longer in print. I mean, you probably can get used copies of these somewhere. It is this particular deck right here. The dream cards. Streffen Kaplan Williams is the person, and these are useful because now he has a certain way you're supposed to use them. You're supposed to look up the imagery and the symbols, and find and then it tells you can find the cards in which archetypes relate to the symbols of your dreams. Over the time, I have decided to use them an entirely different way. I pull all the cards by synchronicity. So basically, I fan them out and I just say, okay, tell me about last night's dream. Now, one of the things I talk about with dream interpretation is something called amplification. And amplification is the first thing that I do when it comes to a dream. So the first thing I'm thinking about is, okay, blood coming from the eyes. The first thing I think of is Greek mythology. I think of Oedipus, okay? And I also think of, I think it was Polymestor in the play Hecabe. And yes, you can tell I'm a myth professor. But both of them had their eyes put out. And, they're kind of represented with blood coming out of the eyes. And the thing about having the eyes put out is that is a blinding that takes, so that one is not focused on the external rational world, but rather on the internal world. Okay, that those people suddenly become prophets. They're able to see, really able to see with the eyes of the dead. They're able to see in mythological terms, in terms of ancient afterlife belief. People believed that the dead could see the future because then those were the people who became prophets. And Oedipus, after he blinded himself, he became almost another kind of, because he had committed the incest taboo, he was on the outskirts of society, but he became almost a magical figure after that, which was, there's a lot of symbolism around the idea of blinding. And that wonderful book I talk about, The Black Goddess by Peter Redgrove, that's one of the things he starts with is the Oedipus myth, because he feels that Oedipus got the riddle of the Sphinx, which is what it walks on 4 legs, then 2, then on 3. And the Sphinx was standing at the gates of Thebes, and if you couldn't answer her riddle, she would eat you, basically. And so when Oedipus comes walking to Thebes, there's the whole story, because he was put out by his parents because they said he was going to kill his father and marry his mother. So they said, oh, we're getting rid of this child. But the shepherd felt sorry for him, took him to the neighboring town. He went to the oracle, got the same prophecy, said, oh, I can't stay in Corinth. I'm not going to do that to my parents, because he doesn't realize they're not his parents. Heads back to the original city, kills his father along the way, unintentionally, and then when he gets to the gate, he confronts the Sphinx, he gets the riddle, and he answers the question by saying it's a human, because you crawl on all 4s, you walk on 2 legs, and then you walk with a cane, so 4 legs and 3. And the Sphinx shrieks and goes away, so people presume he answered the riddle correctly. Redgrave has said, well, or Redgrove, I think is his name. Yeah, he says, well, no, I think it's not. I think it's because he's answering the riddle he's put man at the top of whatever that is. That's placing humans on top of the hierarchy. Basically, is the way that he interpreted it. It sounds better coming from his book, so I don't want to try to explain all of that. I can read that at some point because I do have the book downstairs, but there's but there was a whole thing about how the way in which rational mind becomes privileged, and it's not until Oedipus makes thinks because he has rationalized his way through something that has been fated, and then when he realizes his mistake, he puts his eyes out. Okay, because then it's because the thing is, this is what's privileged, and as I've said, the brain is what's privileged. So let's just see what we have in terms of our dream cards this morning. So tell me about this particular dream. So I draw these. These are too big for me to do my flip method. So Okay, so I've drawn 3. And I'll put these over here for now. Enough room here. And, okay, so the 3 cards we have are 6, 45, and 5. Okay, and this is what they look like. There's 6. Okay. There's 45. And there's 5. Okay. And that's interesting because 5 in particular, I think, has to do with separation, if I can remember correctly. And then we have a whole set of cards. And I've taken some pictures of these that you actually, if you follow this website, you will see that I'll have little snippets of text. And this is where they come from, are these. So we'll see what the symbols, what the archetypes are connected to these. And we have, okay. So the 3 cards we have are direction, originating, and separation. Okay, so the first archetype we have of direction, it says direction is what we value, is when we value somewhere or something greater than life itself. Direction is not simply choosing goals and fulfilling them. All goals deceive, whether one is climbing ambition's ladder, nurturing a family against the vicissitudes of life, or championing a major cause of the people. While these need commitment, they do not transcend the specifics of life. The only commitment that gives ultimate purpose is following source energy to the end of your days, no matter where it leads you. Okay? And then the second card, which probably has a little more to do with, sometimes has to do with the action, sometimes some of it has to do with the images itself. We have originating, and it says, origins do not come out of nothingness, but from what has collapsed before. Each day is new if we allow it to be that way. What was no longer is. The opposites must be united in the present moment. We seek the source, for by a focus greater than ourselves we can unite contraries within and without. The right choice at the right time can start a whole new adventure. Is your passion stronger than your resistance? Are you ready? Okay? And the third card is separation. And this says, through separation, we distinguish ourselves from others and create our own unique being. Welcome conflict rather than resist it. For through struggle, we find how we are different from others and affirm those differences. Unity is not the only goal in life or relationships. Separating out from the collective and intimates is also necessary for individual being. And all of these have tasks. Like the task on this one is, your task is to break old unities, take back projections, and develop life related to but not dependent on others. And this one has to do with taking time to focus on the issue. What is the source of meaning in your life, and what is your commitment to it? And then finally, the last one was, ask if you have a purpose so valuable you can commit your life to it. Okay, so if we think about these in the context of this dream, what it says to me is because, and so this is where I've talked about how dreams, it's both the archetypal and the personal that make a difference here. And for me, I say, okay, well, I feel like this dream is also, because this was something that was my identity for many, many years, and in putting out the eyes, it's kind of like, okay, this was your, because now and again I think about, with the business, I'm like, okay, well, if things are slow, do I need to pick up another real, quote unquote, do I have to work for somebody again? Excuse me, that's been coming up this month. I've been thinking, okay, am I going to have to pick up ideally some remote part-time gig, because I really don't have the energy to promote, I don't drive, and I don't have the energy to devote to something that's full-time. It would more be something like project work or something, like you would find on Upwork or something like that. But that's more, because I'm between adjuncting gigs. I mean, I'm appointed for autumn term, but I don't have anything for the summer. So, so it's a matter of bringing in more clients and or trying to figure that out. So, I think this is part of the mind trying to sort that out. And there's a reminder here. Okay, so we have this idea of separation. And so, of course, it's interesting that it's the right eye, because now the right side, left side's often associated with the feminine, the right side with the masculine. So this has to do with the action and with the rationality. Eyes have to do with focus, and it also has to do with the way in which we interpret the world. So for me, this is a dream, when one eye begins to bleed, and if you've joined me late, I'm talking about a dream that I had last night. So I think, okay, this is more about saying, and interestingly, the fact that whole event starts means that this project timeline that I'm working on in this dream has to stop. So to me, it's almost a reminder that I'm on a track of things. I'm taking a direction, and the origin of that is source. The origin of that is something that's coming from something, well, I think it's within ourselves, but it may also be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so there's a need to separate from the old way of doing things and remember that it's the inner vision that's important and not necessarily the outer vision. That would be my first crack at interpreting this. Like, don't, it's a reminder, because I can get very fixated on things like, planning and finance and paychecks and stuff. And what I find month to month is that I get very fixated and very worried about that kind of stuff. But then by the end of the month, somehow enough clients have come in, all the money's come together, and it's fine. But I do this to myself every single month because, well, probably because I'm Taurus. And this is how I am. But it's, so I think there's a reminder there. Because when I go back to my old job, I was where I was yesterday, just visiting. I was like thinking, because some people were talking to me and saying, oh yeah, they were talking about different things going on, but also saying, but this is a nice place to work and everything. And it was a legitimately nice place to work. There were the issues with the place I felt were bigger than the actual library space that we worked in. But it generally had been a nice place to work. And so there could be that there's a part of me that wants to be like to regress, to kind of pull back to that. Because I also looked up before I started this live stream the individual meanings of, first of all, the main thing was this eye and the fact that it was bleeding. It wasn't wounded though. It wasn't like somebody stuck something in my eye. It just kind of spontaneously started to do that in the dream, started to bleed. So I'm like, okay, so what's the significance of bleeding and what's the significance of the eye? And so the eye, of course, keeps coming up as something having to do with focus and direction, but bleeding has to do with regression. It has to do with the way in which we move backwards. So I feel like the dream is a warning to say, don't move backwards. Like you're doing something that you want to move forward. Like literally there's been a message that's come up in the last few days of don't look back. Don't look back and don't, because sometimes I think, and I did talk about this in yesterday's morning coffee, was I said, well, yeah, sometimes we regress and we move backwards and think the thing that we left that was very stressful to us, we look back at it and think, oh, but it had this aspect or that. So it's funny, I was talking about it yesterday, and then I happened to visit my old workplace to meet my friend for dinner, and then I have this dream. So I'm going to, and this is going to be more general, I'm going to do our Osho Zen reading, because half an hour goes by very, very quickly. So we're already at 6:52, so I want to try to keep this on a proper time. Sometimes I run a couple minutes over. But, so this is going to be the reading. This is not just going to be about me, but this is going to be the reading for today, for people. And these are the kinds of readings. When I talk about doing a psychological reading, this is at least one variety of psychological readings that I do for people as part of my coaching practice. Okay, wow. All right, so our cards today, our first card is experiencing, okay? So this is the Three of Wands, and in the Osho Zen card, experiencing is about, it's what I've said about living life. It's about being here. It's not about being, a lot of times, we're up in our head, and we're, like, you could walk through, you could walk through the most beautiful place, okay? And let's just say you have like when I was in London, if I had to walk to a job or to an appointment or to something like that, and I'd say walk through Regent's Park or something like that. It's beautiful, right? Everything around you is beautiful. There's these beautiful fountains and the long avenue there. They're lined with trees, and it's very, very beautiful. But there's people who are on their phones, who are paying attention to this, paying attention to that, and you're not really experiencing anything that's around you because you're so caught up in the next thing I have to do, the next thing I have to do, the next thing I have to do. And so experiencing is about being in the presence. Like this on this card, it shows a woman hugging a tree, right? It's not suggesting that people have to go out and hug trees, but the idea is that you want to be present where you are. You want to be experiencing life. And the Three of Wands generally is a card of manifesting. Okay, in general tarot, it's about manifesting what it is that you want. But experiencing has to do with the way in which we commune with others, the way in which we commune with nature, right? And the inner feeling of which we're unaware here is the Thunderbolt card. Okay, this is your Tower card. Now, this means that, okay, as we move towards experiencing life, there's a lot on the inside that is no longer proper to who we are, that's falling away. Okay, there's something that's falling away. And this can create kind of inner cataclysm. And the fact that this is showing up as something unconscious, maybe it has to do something with the dream element that I just had. It might be saying, yeah, there's this cataclysm going on unconsciously, and that's kind of a reminder to look inward and not look outward. So that could be a message for me. But I do feel there's a lot of people right now, like I said, clients I've worked with, and also just friends and people I've talked to, who are having a lot of these inner cataclysms. So I don't think this is not just about me. I mean, I could interpret it in that way for me as well. But I think it's about these inner cataclysms that go on, and the way in which we need to address those, and recognize that something's falling away, and you have to kind of meet the process halfway. But a lot of times we want to distract ourselves from it because it makes us feel uneasy, right? But something is trying to change, something in our life that is no longer proper to us, and so we may hit obstacles, we may hit the wall, we may hit boundaries with certain things, or limitations, or something that maybe we've done may suddenly come to an end, and we say, oh, like this is a catastrophe, my life has been thrown into disarray. But I feel like this is saying, no, what falls away is what's no longer, it's what's gone, it's what's over. It's like you need to move on to whatever the next thing is. Now, the external feeling of which we're aware here is creativity. This is the Empress card. And that is, so definitely this idea of restructuring and rebuilding, planting the seeds. I mean, when we talk about the Empress is often associated with pregnancy and things like that. But I feel like it's more metaphorically speaking, it's about the seeds we've planted and what we're waiting to grow, or the seeds that you've planted and you're waiting for the harvest, right? But it's not harvest time yet. So there's a lot that you may be creating that is still waiting to come to fruition. And I have seen that in some of the general tarot readings that I've done. I've got to do actually 3 today for the YouTube channel for this week. Today, but creativity is there's a creativity that's being expressed, but what it's coming out of is this breakdown is causing like a breakthrough, right? It's allowing to create. And the advice card is friendliness. This is the 2 of Cups. So friendliness is about being with others, about being with others. What I'm feeling is like on a human level, not in a superficial way, not in a, let me network with this person and see, how they might be useful to my career or my job. Like, I don't mean that kind of relating. I mean that the relating to people as people. I mean, we have it right under the experiencing card. So this is about, one of the things I think that's happening a lot recently is the human element of things is going away. We were talking about that a lot yesterday, in fact, when I was at my old job, people teaching classes on information literacy and stuff, and saying, you have a lot of students who are trying to write their entire essay in AI. Everybody's just using ChatGPT, and the way in which people give up their creativity to machines. And I'm like, well, that is the human thing about you. Like, that's not what you want to give up. And AI writing is very transparent. I mean, anybody who knows how to write can look at AI, and even if occasionally there's maybe things that AI is good at generating, like, oh, I just need a description for this thing. Oh, okay, that sounds good. But it's not going to replace. People try to write entire books with AI, and it's like, no, you can see it right away. They're horrible, and they're usually not even accurate. And people say, oh, well, it'll get smarter and smarter. I'm like, yeah, but it's still not going to write like a human because it's not a human. And that, to assume that you can give human qualities to a machine, I think is a fundamental misunderstanding of humans. Okay, so this is about friendliness. This is about relating. It's also about loving other people too. Okay, we've talked a lot about how love is really kind of even an act of rebellion these days in a lot of ways, because we are so separated from each other and we're so in our own thing that may not be something. I think a lot of people, in feeling alienated, you get very, very defensive about the outside world. So this is a way in which it's reminding you to allow yourself to be vulnerable and to be human. And the outcome is change. Okay, this is the Wheel of Fortune. So this to me speaks to, there are, out of 5 cards, there are 3 major arcana. And when major arcana comes up, we're talking about changes that the minors tend to be about things you can control. Okay, this has to do with the things that are changeable. The majors have to do with things that are well, probably mostly out of our control. Events that come in and things that happen, the way in which life happens to us. And depending on your outlook, that could be something good or bad. We don't like unpredictable change. We want to be prepared. We want to know what's coming. That's why people a lot of times ask me to do these readings, because they're like, I want to know what's coming. But the problem is, things can change. And what this is saying to me is that there's a lot of change going on in a lot of people's lives. And so this change is, and this change is not something that you have to make any effort to make it happen. It's just happening on its own, and it's just happening to you, not because of your efforts. There's a lot about yielding control and not trying so hard to make something happen. That was a phrase, actually, in speaking of librarianship. It's funny, it kind of comes around to this again. But there was a phrase there was one librarian who I knew who had, for some reason, got this American Library Association Mover and Shaker Award for his Make It Happen thing, which, anyway. Yeah, I always thought, okay, make what happen? I mean, you're a librarian, you're spending more time, like, I don't know, I just felt like that was like a big campaign that had been more about like people looking in the mirror and going, look at me, I'm a librarian, and less time about doing actual librarianship. But, it's, or at least pushing people towards those kinds of skills. So that's just my opinion. But but the thing about it was make it, the idea of making something happen. And this is saying you don't need to make it happen. It's going to happen, is basically what it's saying. We have a situation where all we have to do is go with the flow of where our inner voice is telling us to go. And that's what you need to do. A lot of other voices come in and they fill us with doubt, and they make us think that, but I have to think about this and I have to think about that. And yeah, it's not that those things aren't important, but you find oftentimes that, and I just pulled a Moonology card, the answers you need are coming. It's a full moon in Gemini, okay? And Gemini, again, is about relating. It's that two-sidedness. It's the twins, right? And we had just gotten the two of, they call it the two of water in that deck, but it's the two of cups. Yeah, it's about relating. And so things are, I think for a lot of people, we are about to moving into a space that's going to be more prosperous, that's going to have more opportunities, and where we can actually be excited about where we're going. But the focus, and I feel like almost like that's what my dream meant too, is like the focus should not be rational outward. The focus should be sort of feminine inward. It needs to be more about what we're feeling and what we're expressing, feeling there, rather than what what we've rationalized in our strategic plan for our life or whatever it is. And you can, like I've always said, it's not bad to have a plan as a guideline. I think you need to have a balance of the two. You need to want to have, but when you're not, especially if you feel like you don't have any direction, it's kind of like that George Harrison song. It comes to my head, like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You'll figure out a way to get to where you're going to. And sometimes even what appears to be a mistake ends up putting you on the right road. It's only a mistake in terms of your plan. But I think part of what you become aware of, especially as you're going through transitions, when everything's fine and hunky-dory and you've got, your life is going along as you want it to, then you don't really notice this stuff as much. And if I talked about people about this kind of material, they go, oh, I don't pay any attention to that stuff. I just worry about being a good person every day, and that's it, and that kind of a thing. But then I said, but when you have the crisis, when all of a sudden your back's against the wall, you can only repress that material for so long. And then when it comes out, it's like, okay, where does this fit in? Like, what are you doing here? What is going to, how are you going to integrate this material? So you have to be fluid to some degree. And it's interesting because I think the moon moved into Pisces today. So we're talking about water and fluidity here, right? But there's this idea that you need to listen a bit more to that inner voice. The mistake, is that in always focusing excessively on that voice of the mind, which we assume is what is the paragon of creation, right? That's what makes humans like just so awesome. And yeah, I mean, our rationality is a pretty awesome thing, but it's like I said, it's hardly the only tool in your toolbox, and you shortchange yourself by relying on that one, because that one can only rely on looking at the past and trying to put causal patterns together from the past. Your creativity and everything else is a fountain that comes from something that's deeper. That it's more unconscious, let's just say. I don't even know that it's necessarily a case of, like Alan Watts used to argue, I don't know if it's really inner and outer. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's kind of a thing I've had too, is like the outer world is really not different from the inner world in a lot of ways. But it's a lot of times we don't see the reflection of the inner world, so to speak, what's not in front of our eyes in the world that's in front of our eyes. But it's always impacting us whether we know it or not, but a lot of times we try to push that aside in favor of what's reasonable, sensible, and rational. And again, sometimes that's fine, but when you find that you're when you feel changes are coming and you start to feel that unease about it, it's like, okay, that's a time when you really need to start looking inward and saying, okay, well, and again, I think I had gotten the origins card before. Like, what's the origin? Where's this coming from? It has to be coming out of something else. Maybe something else that we thought was done, or maybe it is just out of something that was done, and now. The bottom line is that there's what's being pointed to here is a need to kind of allow the universe to do its thing, to take a step back and just go with the flow of what makes sense on a day-to-day basis. So anyway, I hope that was a helpful little reading for this morning. And I just want to thank the two of you who have joined me this morning. And like I said, this recording will be available on Instagram in Reels. And also, I'm going to put it up on YouTube on the Liminal Tarot channel. That's youtube.com/@liminaltarot, one word, 5130. So thanks for joining me, and I'll be here again tomorrow morning. So take care.